Kimi K3 is insane. I just used it to replace Fable 5 and the results are shocking. Here are two projects side by side. One was built with Kimi K3 and the other with Fable 5. In this video, we'll go over what this means for the future of AI, the security risks to look out for, and how to actually use it. And stay until the end because I'll give you my exact setup guide for replacing Claude Code with Kimi K3. So what does this model release actually mean for you? This is Kimi K3. It was built by a Chinese lab called Moonshot AI, and it was released just a few days ago on July 16th. It has 2.8 trillion parameters, making it the largest open weight model ever made. And its benchmarks put it neck and neck with frontier models like GPT's 5.6 and Claude Fable 5. And people are calling this a second Deepseek moment because whenever Deepseek rolled around, it shook up the AI market. We can already see how much the Kimi models have jumped since 2.6. Now they're neck and neck with Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6. Now there's a few things you should know to avoid the hype. All of the benchmarks that Moonshot is giving you lean on where the model is the strongest. This is front end and coding. But for broad intelligence, it sits third place. It's still behind Fable 5 and GPT 5.6. And the open weights only come around on July 27th. Up until that point, it's only accessible through the API. And even once it is open weights, you still need some serious hardware in order to actually run it. I'm talking about millions of dollars of compute, only something that's accessible to higher end businesses. But what's important is that you can see this model as the people's model. The US spent weeks trying to control Fable 5, and they even took it offline for a little bit. Kimi K3 has similar capabilities, but nobody can switch it off. What happens when everybody has this model and it can't be taken away? To understand the vision that the frontier labs in the US have for you and have for society, Sam Altman sees his vision of intelligence as something that is sold on a meter, something like water, like power.
We see a future where intelligence is a utility, like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter and use it for whatever they want to use it for.
And he's right that intelligence is becoming essential. Even if the AI bubble were to collapse, there's no way that you can put this genie back in the bottle. There's no way that you can uninvent LLMs. But he's wrong about who's in control. Because if intelligence is an essential utility, the question is simple. Do you want to only get access to it on a meter that someone else controls or from a well that's yours? Open weights means that it's not decided by one company, one country, or one CEO. This is intelligence in everybody's hands. Think of it like having some property with a well where you don't have to pay a water bill. When something's essential, you don't want to rent it. You want to own it. Nobody meters the rain. Nobody bills you for digging your own well. And the model weights that you have today will still work in a decade. And more importantly, in a decade from now, the technology will be in such a place that you can run it on your own hardware. Think about this. People are using AI for chip design. What happens when AI improves the chips that run it? We get a feedback loop where the technology improves exponentially. And if that happens anyway, do you want to live in a world where that improvement is only captured by the top 1% of society? Or do you want to live in a world where everybody has access to it? Where everybody has wells that they can dig from to get intelligence? That's the real selling point. The price is somewhat arbitrary. And going into the numbers, Kimi does undercut the US labs on the price per token. That's a good headline. But when you're actually using it inside of your workflows, it still burns 50 to 70% more tokens per task than GPT 5.6. So cheap tokens don't necessarily mean cheap AI. So what should you do? On July 27th, when this model gets released, download it. Even if you can't run it, you probably can't, you don't have millions of dollars of hardware, still download it. Because these weights only mean something when people actually hold them. Save it, download it, seed it, put it on a hard drive, and then in a decade, try it out on your iPhone 37. But today, for this demo, we're going to be using the API. Now, enough theory. I gave the same prompt to Kimi K3 and Fable 5. It's going to be a flight tracker app where there's a globe. You can see flights going around the planet. And I gave the exact same prompt to both of them. Let's see what both of these models can make in a one-shot prompt. Now, here's the first result that Fable 5 gave us. This is the smartest model, the top of the charts, and it didn't give us a working demo. Like, it just doesn't work. This is supposed to be a flight tracker with a globe here. And yeah, there's nothing. Like, it simply doesn't work. Are there errors that are going on? Okay, let's copy that. Let's give it to Fable and see if it can make a working demo. It doesn't work. The globe doesn't load at all. Here's an error that I see inside of the console. Meanwhile, this is what Kimi K3 gave us the first time. This is a one-shot prompt where I told it to build a flight tracker that's on a 3D globe where you can click on specific flights to view information about them. And it was able to do this in one shot. This is an open weights model, or will be soon. It will be released soon. And this whole build spent $1.43. So I can do something with the terrain. Okay, look at that. That is a neat feature. You can see the Himalayas. Well, if we go here, you can see the Himalayas, China, India, the mountain range here. Let's go to North America. Well, it's nighttime, so you can't quite see anything. Oh, look at that. Okay, this makes the globe spin. So we can just have a background animation of the globe spinning. Let's speed this up. This is 1 hour per second. Okay, nice. Let's pause. And yeah, you can see the terrain. I guess the Appalachian Mountains aren't as tall, so you can't really see as much here. Let's get rid of the clouds. Okay, look at that. And I didn't even tell it to make like a 3D terrain visualizer. It just decided to do that. And then if I click on the flight, so we have DAL 7888, magic number, trips. If I click save to journal, okay, save to my journal, we can open it up. And if we refresh, it should persist. There we go. We can view the historical data as well. So this is all mock data. I didn't actually get it like a flight radar API key. But yeah, we can view the different date ranges, see the flights that went on, and we can view a time lapse of all the different flights. So let's see this one, for example. CLX went from Bogota to Madrid. I can save that to my journal. And then what happens if I click, oh, okay, so I can click view flight to see that same flight. Does it change the date? Okay, so this one occurred on the 10th. If I click view flight, look at that, it changes the date as well. That shows, at least in my opinion, a deep understanding of the problem, because if you took a dumber model and you gave it the same prompt, it would, like, I imagine there'd be something, it would just check the flight number, and then it would not go to the correct date when the flight actually occurred. It would just find like a matching date number. Right? There's so many ways you could have messed this up, and I'm actually really surprised that Kimi K3 was able to make something with such a deep understanding of the question as a whole. Now let's take a look at Fable 5. Okay, this looks pretty nice. Very high contrast. When we compare that to Kimi K3, then yeah, it looks all right. This one is definitely very appealing to look at. Let's check out the journal and look at these design decisions. These two developed completely independently. I didn't tell it where to put the journal, where to put, like to put a bar up here to have something on the left. They both independently made a card on the left and the journal on the top right. I would imagine that there's a chance Kimi K3 was trained on Claude's outputs. A lot of these Chinese labs do distill the frontier Western models, so there's a chance that happened. But the thing that matters for you is that these are open weight models. Like, this is something that anyone has access to, which means that it can never be taken away from you. From a user experience perspective, I noticed that the map that Fable built the globe doesn't stop spinning whenever I move the globe, which is a bit annoying to use. Kimi K3 definitely had a better understanding of, if I'm dragging around, it should not spin, and I should only enable this. So like, look, if it's spinning and I stop it, it stops spinning. Whereas Fable's build will continue to spin. I don't know if is there even a way to pause this? 6 hours. Okay, so I can pause the animation, but I can't pause the globe from spinning. In my book, Kimi K3 gets a point for that. And there's another tell that these two models were trained on the same data, or one was distilled from another, because the colors of these flights, commercial, cargo, private, and military, are the exact same. Military is green, cargo is orange, private is pink, commercial is blue. It's the exact same on the map that Kimi made, or in the UI that Kimi made. You'll also notice that on Fable 5's globe, it doesn't map the light from the sun. So I can choose day or night, but this is not an accurate representation of the world, because it's not daytime everywhere. There's no option that is time accurate, whereas Kimi was able to do that. They were able to make it daytime, where it's daytime, and you can see as the time continues, parts of the world go dark, it becomes nighttime, and then on the other side of the world, it becomes light. And even on Kimi, if we go back, we can see that, yep, it does line up with the time of the day. It isn't just like a static animation. But let's not be too hard on Fable. Let's find some things that it did well. So let's go ahead and click on the airplane. Okay, this is pretty nice. There's an altimeter, or a graph of the altitude. We can see that at this point, the plane is descending before it's about to land. Is it though? It seems kind of far from its destination to begin its descent. Let's see where it goes. Okay, let's go back a day. Where do we go for that? Is there an option to do that? I don't see a date selector anywhere. There's no way to view the data historically. Let's try saving a flight. At least whenever I click on a flight, the Earth stops spinning. That's a plus. Let's save this flight. Okay, and then we'll go forward into the future. We'll let that pan out. What happens if I go back? Can I locate it? Is this the same one? July 17th at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. And it crashed. Okay, that is wonderful. We'll give that feedback to Fable. Let's try it out. Let's try viewing that flight again. Locate and play. Cool. And then once it's done playing it, it pauses. That's a neat feature. So if I go back, will it go back in time? Okay, it will. So we are able to get historical data. And look at that, it says landed this long ago. We can even play that. Okay, so I can continue to play the same flight over and over again. There's a feature to do that. And if we click center, it will center on this flight. Neat. Let's watch that again. So I can click play. It takes off from Tokyo and flies to Cancun. Let's let it continue. Let's see what else is going on. So this appears to be the graph of how many flights are in the air. So at this point, there's around 260. It's a bit lower, and then it peaks up around 270. Okay. I believe that's what this chart is supposed to demonstrate, although there is not a key to indicate what this actually is. And if I hover, there's no indication of what this is. And it appears that we only have data for July 17th. There's no way to navigate this calendar. That might be why there wasn't a calendar in the UI, because it only has data for the 17th. That does seem like a gap, and it stops at 6 p.m. on the 17th. So perhaps Fable generated synthetic data for these 18 or so hours. And then, yeah, this UI is just weird. I have to enter a time in Unix time. Weird UI. Perhaps Fable just generated synthetic data for these 18 hours, and that's what it's pulling from. Let's go ask the models how they got the flight data. How did you generate the flight data? So here's how Claude Fable 5 and Kimi K3 came up with the flight data. And you can see a bit of parallels in how they made their decisions. The first one was the type of flights. So that is commercial, cargo, private, and military. What's interesting about the two of them is that the distribution, or like the most common ones, are the same. For like specifically, it goes commercial, cargo, private, military. Commercial, cargo, private, and military. So perhaps they have an understanding of how frequent different types of flights are. They didn't use the exact same numbers, which I'm sure if you had different runs of the same model, they would also choose a different random number. So that is expected. But I just find it interesting that they have these exact same categories. They also chose the same colors to represent them. I don't know if there's some sort of standard color in the aviation industry. If you're a pilot, let me know down below if private jets are just pink for whatever reason. So you can write off the fact that some flights are different than others, but the fact that they gave the same colors to them is kind of telling that they're looking at the same data. So one of the things I noticed is that, okay, so here's an interesting tell and something that you need to understand if you're using different coding agents. The design decisions that Claude Fable 5 made, specifically about the colors that it chose for different types of flights and how it made the app favorable or usable by colorblind people, is that these design decisions are not part of Claude, the model itself. These are parts of Claude Code, the harness. And so what I want to do is I have a third session open where we're going to be using Claude Code, the harness, but running Kimi K3 through it. That way we can get an accurate sense of what decisions are made on the model level and then what decisions are influenced by the harness itself. And for good measure, we'll have a control group as well, which is going to be a dumber model running through OpenCode so that we can see what it would generate. So let's go ahead and open up OpenCode, and I'll choose something like Minimax, right? Those are models that I've tried out before, the new Minimax M3 model. There's a lot of hype around that, but when I tried it out, it didn't seem to have the same depth of technical understanding that Kimi K3 has. So let's go ahead and give Minimax that prompt as well. One quick thing, every time that I gave this prompt to the previous models, they spent minutes thinking. Like Fable 5 spent, I believe, 10 minutes thinking. There's no output, nothing, literally just thinking about the original prompt. Minimax just goes into writing stuff. So we'll see how good Minimax is going to be. You can see Kimi K3 is also perusing, right? Thinking 4 minutes. It's probably going to be a while as well. I'm not sure if that's exactly the model or if that's the harness that is causing the agent to just think so long. But we'll see what the final output is. That's going to be what I judge it on, not based on really the process it took to get there. So the results are now in. We can see what Minimax M3 generated, as well as what Kimi K3 running inside of Claude Code was able to make. So let's open up both of these. Copy that. So this is what Minimax M3 made. It does not appear to work. And it's behavior like this that you usually see with smaller and dumber models, although Fable did make the same mistake. It didn't work on the first try. But there's a few other things that Minimax M3 is doing. These buttons are not contained within the parent element that they should be in. This one's going outside of the sidebar. You can also notice that the colors they chose, commercial, cargo, private, and military, are a bit different. I believe the other two models used the same colors for these three, but military was green. So Minimax has chosen to use red for this one. Let's go ahead and give this error code to Minimax and see if it can make a working demo. And then let's see what Kimi K3 has made running inside of the Claude Code harness. The first thing you'll notice is that the sea levels appear to have risen. This must be after global warming or something, like the polar ice caps have just melted and the whole world is just buried in water. It's very interesting. And the terrain itself is pretty low poly. Something else, it chose to use the red color for military, whereas the other ones I believe use green for the military. And we can raise and lower the terrain, which is what we saw with Kimi K3 running inside of OpenCode, but the terrain appears to all be buried underwater. There is a button to auto rotate, which is a pretty neat feature. And then if we grab the globe, it stops spinning. So that is good. That's a good understanding of the user experience. It just decided to put a checkbox on the side instead of a button in the top right. And once again, for reference, this is what Kimi K3 made it when we ran it inside of OpenCode. So for some reason, it appears like using Claude Code, it could be a bit of randomness, but maybe using Claude Code as a harness is not as effective for, I'm sure it could be due to a number of reasons. It could be the skills that I've installed. It could be the way that tool calls are handled in these different harnesses. There's a lot of reasons why we would get worse performance from the same model using a different harness. And the prompt itself was the same. I would say that objectively, the generation that Kimi made inside of OpenCode, which is this one, is objectively better than whatever this is. And Minimax has just gotten back to us with a fix for its app. This is what it has produced. And I'm not cropping or zooming in anywhere in the video. Like this is the output it is given me. It doesn't appear to display the globe correctly. We have some terrain. It's not submerged underwater, but yeah, I don't know what this is supposed to be doing. Let's see what the rotation does. Can I turn the rotation on? Oh, okay, there we go. This is a bit more viewable. These things are flights. I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. This red dot in the middle of Louisiana is supposed to represent San Francisco to Miami. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a plane and it's displaying just a cylinder. So it renders the planes. Definitely that is not correct at all. Once again, this is what Minimax was able to generate in OpenCode. So I think you're able to see that trying different harnesses and different models are of course able to produce different outputs. Now I'm showing you what Minimax has made as a comparison to show what a correct solution looks like versus an incorrect solution, and to help you understand the combination of models and harnesses. So again, this uses OpenCode. This is the same harness that Kimi K3 used to make this web app, which is significantly better. But also Kimi K3 running inside of Claude Code produced this mess. And then we'll compare that to what Fable 5 made, which again is this. So I'd say these two are comparable in terms of the quality. They obviously have a different style in the way that they made it, but they're both accurate. They both display the data well. They're interactive. They have all the functionality. But of course, this one is closed weights from a frontier lab. This is Fable 5, and this is Kimi K3. This is a model that is soon to be open weights once it's released. The release of Kimi K3 is going to change the cybersecurity landscape forever. Even if you never use this model, you never send it a prompt, you never download it, the way that you build software is going to have to change. In this video, I'll break down exactly why and then what you can do to fix it step by step, including how to use the same technology to defend yourself right now. So the first thing you should know about this model, Kimi K3, is that it performs neck and neck with Claude Fable 5. Fable 5 is the most capable model widely available today, and even though it's open weight and a lot of these open weight models seem like a toy, Kimi K3 is different. It's frontier level intelligence. Now, the thing about Fable 5 is that it was treated as dangerous. The US government temporarily took it offline, citing cybersecurity fears and bioweapons fears. The difference is that Fable 5 can be locked down. It's hosted on Anthropic servers, whereas Kimi K3 is open weight. Now, what does open weight actually mean? It means that any provider can host it. Any firm, any company, any threat actor can run this themselves if they have enough compute. That means that Anthropic isn't there to block requests. No company can see their logs. So what this means simply is that you have the capabilities of a model like Fable, but anybody can run it. Attackers get the same power that defenders have with none of the restrictions. This means that you should expect a real rise in these attacks, and that's coming whether or not you choose to use this model. Now, the model will be released on July 27th. Up until that point, it's only accessible via the API. And it's expected that the developer of Kimi K3 is going to spend this time to make sure that the model cannot be used for malice. But even with the best restrictions, if it's hosted on your own machine, people will always find a way. So you should build like this is already happening. You should assume that attackers now have a frontier model that they can use for hacking. Your new baseline of security needs to rise to meet that. These attacks are no longer only going to come from an elite North Korean hacking group. It can come from any script kiddie or startup using this from a provider. But the good news is that you can use the same power that they would use to attack in order to defend yourself. So what you can do is actually audit your own app using AI. You can use a strong model like Kimi K3, or you can use Fable or GPT 5.6 to look at your own codebase and have it find weaknesses. And make this a routine. Don't just run it once. Anytime that you have new features, especially ones that touch large portions of your codebase, run the audit again. And what I'll actually do is give you this cybersecurity Git repository. There's actually a community project called Anthropic Cybersecurity Skills. It has 754 structured skills across 27 areas, and it's free to use. It works with Claude Code, Cursor, Codex, etc. But you still need to know the limit. Like, even if you use these AI frameworks and you use the best coding agents to find vulnerabilities, that is just the starting point. If you have a real production app with user data, that is not enough. Pay an actual security professional to review it, to pen test it, and to fix the vulnerabilities that for sure exist in your app. Because if you don't find them, attackers will find them first, and it's way easier for them to do that now. Now, I want to be clear, the launch of Kimi K3 is not all bad. The overwhelming majority of people who use this model will use it for good. Only a tiny majority of people will ever use it for malice, but you need to be aware of those people because they can cause harm. I firmly believe that Kimi K3 is going to be a net positive for the world because it checks the AI giants and it gives power back to individuals to run AI themselves. Even if they're not going to use it on their own hardware, they don't have the equipment for it, by allowing providers to host it, it's going to be a counterbalance in the market. But being optimistic doesn't mean being unprepared, so harden your setups anyway. Now, let's go into part 2, which is about using Kimi K3. If you want to use this model, how do you do it in the right way to protect yourself and protect your data? Right now, as of July 17th, there's only one host, and that is Moonshot, the creators of this model, which is based in China. That means that every prompt you send, including your code and your data, goes to Chinese servers. For a throwaway project, something that's not important, you could say that's fine. For anything sensitive, stop and think. Now, on July 17th, the weights of this model go public. What that means is that providers anywhere can host this model, not just Moonshot. And that will inevitably include a lot of firms which are based in the United States. In that case, you can choose who is spying on you, but at least you have control over where your data goes. Now, one thing, if you're going to use a routing platform like OpenRouter, check the privacy of which platform you are using. Look for platforms that have ZDR, that is zero data retention. I believe OpenRouter does this by default, but you can opt into data collection for training, and they'll give you something like a 1% discount for it. So always be aware of where your data is going at every step along the chain. So if privacy matters to you, don't rush onto the Chinese hosted version just today. Wait for a provider that you're actually comfortable with, or if you have millions of dollars in compute, you can of course run this yourself. You'll have the same model with the same weights, but the only thing that changes is who sees your prompts. So let's get into the actual setup about how you can begin using Kimi K3. There are 2 steps to begin using this model inside of a coding agent. The first step is to get an API key, either through OpenRouter or through the Kimi API directly. The second step is to connect this API key inside of your agent, such as OpenCode, which I would recommend, or Claude Code, which involves a workaround. So let's get started with step number 1. I'm going to be using OpenRouter because I already have funds on this account, so it makes it very easy to switch between different models without dedicating, like adding money to an account just to try something out. Any funds that you add to OpenRouter can be used on Kimi K3 or any future models that get added to this platform. And in exchange for having access to these models, they charge a 5% fee. So if you want to keep using Kimi K3 and you want to avoid that 5% fee, it would make sense to switch to their official API. But if you're just going to try it out, you can still use the funds that you have on OpenRouter. So what you'll want to do is go to OpenRouter, go up to your profile, and then go to API keys. If you don't have an API key already, go up and click new key, and then you can type in a name for it. So I'm going to call this one OpenCode, and we're just going to leave everything as the default. Then go ahead and copy this, and we'll connect it to OpenCode or Claude Code. So now we are inside of Visual Studio Code, which is the IDE that I use. This allows you to run Claude Code and OpenCode either inside of the terminal or via an extension. For example, if I hit Command T on my machine, I have it set up to open up the Claude Code tab in this nice UI, but you can also just run Claude inside of your terminal to get to the Claude Code CLI. Now, like I said, I would recommend using OpenCode instead. However, if you have your Claude Code set up in the way that you like and you don't want to migrate everything over, I'll show you how you can set up Claude Code to actually run Kimi K3. So for that first part, let's get OpenCode set up. You can go to opencode.ai/download. This will give you the setup instructions to download OpenCode. It's pretty simple. You can use NPM, you can use Homebrew, and then once you have it on your machine, you simply type OpenCode in your terminal, and you'll have this nice interface to begin using it. Once you're inside of the interface, you'll need to type in /connect and then choose Open Router and then paste in the API key that you've copied and then hit enter. Then you can choose your model. So I'm going to choose Kimi K3 and now I have it selected. If you don't see Kimi K3, what you'll want to do is type in OpenCode models -- refresh. This will refresh the models that are on OpenRouter, and then if you restart OpenCode, you should be able to see the model in the model selector. So there we go. We have Kimi K3 selected. Now let's go into how to set it up in Claude Code if you want to do that. So I'll include a file in the description of this video that you can run. And after you add your OpenAI key, you'll be able to route all of your usage through Kimi K3. All you need to do is add your OpenRouter key to this environment file. So what that file is your Claude directory /credentials.env. I'm not going to open this up on camera, but it has different API keys that I use inside of different projects. Inside of there, you'll need to add your OpenRouter API key, and then you can simply run this script, Kimi Claude Code, which is a script that I've shown on screen, and it will open up the Claude Code CLI routing through Kimi K3. So effectively, these two do the same thing. These are both running Kimi K3. This one is using the Claude Code harness. This one is using the OpenCode harness. And if I type, "What model is this?" we should get a response. And there we go. This session is running Moonshot Kimi K3. The Claude Fable 5 text appears in the system prompt, but yeah, we're using Kimi K3 here. So there you have it. That's how you can set up Kimi K3 to begin using it inside of your agentic workflows. But the thing is, even if you're using the best prompts inside of your workflows, there's a mistake that most developers make that keeps them from getting the best results. And it actually involves using multiple agents instead of just one. If you want to see my full video breaking down exactly how to set this up, then click the video you see right here on screen.